I've never actually sat down and told the story, so this is a bit difficult. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is my story time video. I've been talking about this one quite a few times in some of my previous videos, and I feel like today is for some reason just the perfect day to talk about it. Today doesn't really mean anything, the date isn't anything special, but I just thought that, I don't know, today was the day to do this video. So I just want to put a trigger warning in at first. In this video I'm going to be talking about cancer, also death, baby loss, and also some bodily harm as well, so please view at your own discretion. And I guess I will get straight into it. I can't really tell one story without the other, so these two events happened between June of 2017 and April of 2018, so like 10 months. So I'm basically just gonna start from the beginning. I haven't actually told this story as such. I mean, I've talked about it with people, I've talked about bits and pieces, I've made a post on Facebook and made it public and just let people share it, and I did an article in the newspaper about this too, but I've never actually sat down and told the story, so this is a bit difficult. I've got it written down on my phone, so if you see me looking down, because this is such a sort of long story, I had to write everything down so I can remember which order it all happened. So okay, so it started in June, and I had one of Grandad's friends come round to my house saying that Grandad had fallen over. My Grandad's he was only 57 at the time, so he wasn't, he wasn't old. His body was, he had a broken back, but his body was still pretty able. And so his friend came over and told me that Grandad had fallen over, so I went up to the hospital to see Grandad and just, make sure he was okay, work out what was going on. And when I got to the hospital, I noticed that he had cut all of his long hair off. His hair was sort of naturally the length of mine, and he had cut it off jagged pieces. There was no method to it. He cut it off, and I knew that something was definitely wrong. He's had long hair my entire life, so to see that he'd cut it off was just a huge deal, and I knew that something was off right away, but I had no idea that it was going to be as bad as what it was. So end of June, start of July, we got Grandad's diagnosis. He got a biopsy done and some CT scans, and we found out that he had lung cancer, which was stage 4, and he also had several brain metastasis, which means that the cancer had spread from his lungs through his bloodstream and travelled up into his brain, and it was forming several lumps in his frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is basically responsible for your cognitive function, your ability to speak, your ability to reason, your ability to maintain a conversation, and basically it's who you are as a person, all in one little package in your frontal lobe. So after we got back from the hospital, because my Grandad lived alone, my Nana passed away in 2005, and so Grandad had lived alone that whole time, and it was pretty close to my place, so that wasn't too bad. But so my partner and I decided that we would move in to Grandad's. I had been visiting his house pretty much every weekend my entire life, so I had a bedroom there. His son happened to move in before I did, which was great, so I ended up moving into the lounge, which was fine, and Zach and I just put our bed in there and slept in there, and his son had my old room. And things were going pretty good at first. We sort of shared the cooking and the groceries and that sort of thing. Yeah, it was kind of helpful. having a lot of people around. Grandad was pretty okay for the most part. Yeah, it wasn't until August, around his birthday, when we went down to Christchurch so he could get radiation, when things fully took a turn. So up until August everything was all good, and then on the 6th of August I think we flew down to Christchurch. Grandad's birthday was on the 9th, so we celebrated his birthday with his family down there, which was awesome. He hadn't celebrated a birthday with this specific family member for about 40 years, so I believe, which is incredible. Might only be 20 years, I can't remember, but a long time anyway, so it was really cool that Grandad got to spend his birthday with his brother. And yeah, so Grandad got lots of radiation. I think he had 5 sessions. They only went for a few minutes at a time. He just laid down in this machine. They made a mask for his face, which my mum still has, and basically it's like this mesh mask, and it goes on wet, and then they dry it and it moulds to his face and clips to the table, so when he's lying down they can clip him to the table, so while they're radiating his brain, he can stay still. So 5 sessions of that, and the machine would just slowly go back and forth over his whole head, so they were scanning his whole brain, which sort of told me that something was definitely wrong. Yeah, so the medication that Grandad was on, some of it was pretty horrible. He was on so many pills. He had to take a steroid in the morning, which would help with the swelling in his brain so that he didn't have headaches and that sort of thing. But that steroid caused like a whole bunch of side effects. So they made him have water retention in his legs. He's not a very big man. He's probably my build even. And so his legs swelled up to the size of tree trunks. And the steroid also caused type 1 diabetes. So I hate to say it, but fortunately for me, I have family who have diabetes, so I've been around them, I've watched them injecting their insulin and testing their blood sugars and watching what they eat, and I've seen the ups and the downs and all of that. So it was kind of good that I had experienced that, so I knew what to do for Grandad's diabetes. I had to administer his insulin for him. We tested his blood sugars to work out where his level was and how much insulin to give him. That all depended on how high or low his sugars were. So that was pretty hard. I didn't like injecting him. I had to inject him in his stomach, and then after a while he decided that he didn't mind doing it himself, so he started injecting himself in his leg, which was cool. That wasn't cool, but it was easier for me not having to do it for him. Yeah, morphine, which was a pretty strong one. He used to take muscle relaxants and sort of like nerve blockers as well. He took medication for the nausea because of all the pills. He took medication for anxiety. He took sleeping pills at night, so obviously he could sleep. And yes, the steroids every morning. So at one point Grandad was admitted into a hospital because he somehow contracted pneumonia. And at the same time, so the Grandad that I'm talking about is my mum's de facto partner, so they were together for a very, very long time, right up until she passed away. So my mum's stepdad. So when Grandad went into hospital with pneumonia, my mum's biological father, my papa, happened to have pneumonia as well, and they've got a bit of a conflicting past, and they happened to be in the same room together, which was kind of funny. Kind of made light of a bad situation, and yeah, so they both had pneumonia at the same time. It was kind of 2 different types. Papa had problems as well. He'd been having issues for a couple years beforehand. We didn't quite know how sinister it was with him at that point. So my mum was looking after Papa while I was looking after Grandad, and she would still come and help me pick up scripts and that sort of thing because I don't drive. And yeah, so she helped with that as well as looking after her dad. Okay, so around the time that Grandad was admitted into hospital with pneumonia, he somehow contracted hepatitis C. So I believe this is from dirty needles. I don't believe that he contracted this in the hospital. I have a theory on how he got it, although the doctors did say that it can lay dormant in your system for many years without any warnings or side effects, and basically you would have no knowledge that you have it unless you get tested for it, which he happened to. So we found out that he had Hep C, so that meant that every time I tested his blood sugars or anything like that, because he still kind of needed my help with that part, I had to make sure that I had to be very careful that I didn't get any of his blood on my hands or in any cuts of mine or anything like that, otherwise I could have contracted hepatitis C. I have been tested and luckily I didn't, but that just sort of added to everything that was going on. So pretty much after the radiation in August, everything was sort of okay. I mean, he was on all these medications, so basically our day-to-day life was just working out how to make his life as comfortable as possible. Throughout the whole situation, he refused to believe that he was going to die. The doctors basically told us that there was no cure, but they could just relieve his symptoms and make him feel sort of, like I said, more comfortable. But he refused to believe it, and I don't know whether that was determination or denial, but he was adamant that he was going to get better and he was going to beat this and everything would be okay. And that was cool, but it was really hard to deal with because I knew what was going to happen. I'd been Googling lung cancer, brain cancer, stage 4, everything that I could think of to look up, and basically everything said that he would pass away anywhere between 6 and 10 months. And there was no real way of knowing until you were getting close to the end. So at times when I needed to talk to somebody about it, I needed to talk to him about it. He didn't want to because he didn't believe that that was what was going to happen. So yeah, that made it pretty hard. Yeah, so pretty much between August and November we sort of just watched movies, spent time with each other talking, and I used to do a lot of drawings and that sort of thing, and yeah, a lot of movies, which was good. That sort of gave him something to concentrate on and something to look forward to, I suppose. And then end of November-ish, Grandad had fallen over a couple more times, so the first time he fell over was in the hallway of his house. This was in the middle of the night. I don't actually know what he was doing. He was coming back from the lounge towards the dining room, and my room came off the dining room. Actually no, I was still in the lounge at this point. His son was still living in my room. So Grandad was coming from the lounge, my bedroom, towards the dining room and happened to fall over, and I don't know where I was, but I heard it anyway and I went and helped him. And then the next time he fell over was when he was trying to get out of his chair. His legs just gave way on him and he fell. And then another time was coming out of the bathroom. He again just sort of legs gave way on him and he fell over. And then the last time, the one that kind of I think messed with him was, it wasn't the last time, but I mean the last fall in this little series of falls that he had within sort of 48 hours. He fell backwards and he hit his head on the floor, and so we took him up to the hospital to sort of get him looked at, and he hated going to the hospital. Like I said, he refused to believe that he was as sick as he was and that he was going to die, so he didn't want to go there, he didn't want to be there. Yeah, so pretty much with these falls, I mean he came back home, and because of these falls I couldn't really leave him alone, and my partner wasn't working at the time. He was helping me with Grandad full time, and we were getting to the point where the medication was stopping Grandad from sleeping, so he would stay up for a whole night and a whole day and then finally go to sleep. So my partner and I would do shifts and make sure that we look after him, so we didn't really see each other too much. And yeah, so leaving him alone was almost impossible. After that last fall that he had, his son decided to move out. I still don't know why. I don't understand what happened. We didn't hear from him from November until February. I still don't know what happened, but whatever it is his problem and not mine. So on the 8th of December, my papa, my mum's dad, who she was looking after, was diagnosed with cancer as well. Now, I believe that it was in his esophagus, but I think it started somewhere else and it had spread to there. I'm not actually too sure. But basically, he was diagnosed, and then 23 days later, on the 8th of December, he passed away. And I managed to go and say goodbye to him, which was good, and we said all the necessary things. And then going to his funeral was definitely difficult. I remember thinking the whole time about Grandad at home by himself, and that I couldn't stay long at this funeral because I had to get home and make sure Grandad hadn't fallen over, because he wouldn't be able to yell for help if he had. So yeah, I ended up having to leave the funeral early to just make sure that Grandad was okay, which he was, thank God. But I don't regret it, but I kind of do regret it. I mean, I wish I could have said my proper goodbyes at the service for Papa, but I mean, it is what it is. I still had a job to do. Yeah, so around January, things really started going downhill with Grandad. There was one point where he stayed up for 65 hours straight, so Zach and I had to take shifts, and he would sleep and I would look after Grandad, and usually I took the day shift and Zach took the night shift because Grandad had most of his medication during the day, which only I knew about. Then I was able to administer that, and Zach would just sort of sit up at night and watch movies with him. Grandad might doze in his chair. His chair in the dining room seemed to be the most comfortable place that he liked being. He must have felt safer there, and a lot of times when he was going to and from bed he would fall over. So I guess he just preferred being in his chair. It was higher to be able to stand up.